Hello everyone. I'm super excited. I decided I was going to go live for parts 4 and 5 of my content planning series where I'm sharing how I plan out like a month of content with just a few minutes a day during like a week, right? Ignore the like weekend sleepy face, all that good stuff. But super excited to dive into this because it was going to be really hard to really show you what I wanted to share with you in just a minute and a half for each part 4 and part 5. So super excited to dive in. I'm still going to try to keep it nice and short and sweet, nice 10 to 15 minutes unless anyone has any questions. But where we left off in part 1, we did a brain dump and we talked about all the different things that we want to accomplish for the month. So getting those, figuring out what your goals are going to be for the month. And then in part 2, kind of starting to map what that looks like out. Ranking what you want to be working on and where it's going to fit in, having like one big thing, and then whether that's like a launch or relaunching a current offer, and then honing in on those other little goals. And then in part 3, we just started kind of figuring out, okay, we're going to be posting X amount of times, and we're going to be making sure we share certain types of content, but we kept it super general. So I'm going to flip my screen and show you kind of where we left off. Here we go. So like I said, this is kind of like what my January had planned to be, right? So increasing reach was one of my goals. I had a lead gen magnet, and then warming up for a launch mode. So I set 2 weeks aside for that, a week for my magnet, and then increasing reach. So the types of content I wanted to focus on with that was very general. Like I said, we want to keep this super general so that we can use this as a template for ourselves, right? So that if you save something like this separate and then create another page with the type of content you're actually going to post, you could go back and have like this for your next launch next quarter, pull that and know exactly what type of content you want to post, right? Even if it's a different launch. So this is when you start getting a little bit more specific so that you have an idea of what you're going to be posting. Again, we're not going out and actually planning all of the content at this point. Well, no, we're planning the content. We're not creating the content. So we're not sitting here writing captions. We're not going to sit here and write out every single little thing that we want to make sure we cover in that piece of content, right? But what we want to do is make sure we know the goals. So again, I'll share my screen. So like I said, I just use a nice little simple Google sheet, but you could use your calendar. You could use like whatever project management system you use, whatever it is that works for you. And under what's happening, I kind of put what I'm working towards as my like current goals, right? So increase reach, lead gen magnet, warm up for a launch, and then launch mode, like super launch mode. Warm up for a launch for me is like more of that, like really making sure your audience is warmed up in that problem awareness kind of zone. So you see that I have very general titles of what I want to include. And then this is based on posting 3 to 4 times a week, except for during a launch week, which I will want to make sure I post 5 times. So the big pieces here for like increasing reach, I wanted to focus on edutaining, sharing a hack, and then good trending stuff. And then for my magnet, what's the problem that freebie helps with, pain point, the solution, what's in it for them, and what will they get from this offer? And then that leads into warming up my audience some more, right? This lead gen magnet week also helps me lean into warming up my audience. So what this starts to look like is I go in for each of these days and I want to like write my hook, or at least the topic of what my piece of content is going to be about. So that for each of these post days, I have at least a one-liner there based on what my post is going to be about. Again, I am not creating the content right now, and that's how I'm able to keep this plan very simple. So like I will go and pull up my past content and start looking through there. So for example, this one is a lead gen magnet. I'm going to look at problem awareness. What does this freebie help with? So for example, I just had my content series challenge last week. That for me, that is a lead magnet because it lets me offer you a freebie And I'd like to do freebies a little differently. I don't always offer like a guide or an ebook or anything like that. I love, like, instead of just doing, like, here, read this, I want to show you what to do, right? So that's one of my favorite types of lead magnets, is like a challenge or something. So the problem awareness, what does that freebie help with? So that freebie for me is helping you create bingeable content, right? So I want to make sure you're aware that that's a problem you might be having, right? So what does a hook look like for that? I type that in. And then what's the pain point that addresses? That's like my next day of content. And I would go in, add like a one-liner there. And then the solution, and then what's in it for them? What will they get from this offer? You get an idea of content for the week, right? So just keeping it super, super general. Then I know exactly what I need to post about every single day. I can go in either the week before, like if I want to batch my content, I could do on like Sunday night and go, okay, Monday through Thursday, I already have my content for the week. And I could go ahead and batch it right then and there. Or if I wanted to, because sometimes I do, I could do it on the fly because I already know exactly what I'm going to be posting about. I might not know the caption. I might not know if it's going to be a reel or carousel, but I have an idea of what it's going to be. So again, we want to keep it so that it's like, we're keeping this super, super general for now, but you can add in your details. This is so that you can add in, like, you'll have a general outline, and you want to be doing this maybe a week or two before the month hits, right? So that when you have that outline, you know what you need to do every day. You know if you need to be batching your content. You know if you need to be not batching your content, whatever it is. Excuse me. I might sneeze. Oh, no. Okay. So from there, you've got your 4 days of what you're going to post, right? So you know what's going to hit your feed, or your 3 days, or your 2 days, whatever that consistency looks like for you. And then I'm going to flip my screen again. Okay. So when I flip my screen again, I also keep a spot for my story. So then I also have it like broken out. So if I want to know for a fact, I want to have content created like in Canva, I could break this out, and then I just have to go ahead and make my hook. But then I know that everything, my what's happening is kind of like my CTA offer. Like 90% of the time it's going to be leading to that. For my increasing reach, my CTA or my offer is probably going to be like, make sure you're following for XYZ, or like one of those like comment for more information about this or that, whatever it is. So then once I have these days broken down and I have like my hook written for them, I'm going to go in and add an idea for my story for every single day of the week. What does that look like? So, for example, if it's problem awareness, what does this freebie help with, right? I might share in my stories that day, like I want to have a general idea of what I'm sharing. And like I said, I want to have every single day a like general idea of what I'm going to post my stories, at least Monday through Friday. Problem awareness. So what does this freebie help with, right? That's my post for the day. And then I want to kind of have something similar, either mirror that, or maybe I'm going to start breaking it down into one of the pain points I'm going to cover the next day, and with a poll that will kind of lead into this post. Again, we can mirror for this day, or we can go ahead and like have it broken out. So then once you're done, so part 4, it's adding in those hooks for each of your pieces of content. Part 5 is adding in your stories, right? So making sure you have an idea of what you're posting. But here's the thing, because we're only going to put in these days, right? This still gives me flexibility because I haven't created any of this content yet. I'm just creating an outline for what I want to make sure gets hit. So then if I wake up and I do my batching on Sundays, and I wake up on the 7th, right? And I go, okay, I'm exhausted. I have time to make my content for tomorrow. That's it. But I know in my stories I want to cover this. I could shift this whole week for myself and be good to go. And now, hold on one second. So it's a lot, but at the same time, like I said, it kind of looks a little different. I'm going to flip my screen and show you what like December looked like for me. Again, it was a light month because December for me, it's more important for me to connect and take the time I do have to spend it in the DMs or engaging with you. But then it becomes something like this. This is like my general calendar. with what I covered type of thing. And it has just like a little bit of everything on each day. But again, it doesn't have all of my captions or my like copy in here. Thanks, Nams. It just has like a general idea. And then I have in another spot my actual content. Sometimes I'll add like the link directly to that Google Doc or anything. But again, this is just my super general. I want to know what's happening, but I know I have flexibility. I need to know what offer is happening. I need to know what is happening. And I need to know a way I can show up in my stories every day, right? And that's how I kind of keep everything super flexible, planned out so that I can open up my Google Sheet and go, okay, this week I am promoting my lead magnet. I can go in my stories and I can share a screenshot from the last time I did a challenge. I could go into my stories and talk about how to sign up for the challenge. I can talk in the stories about, oh, I just had the training for my challenge. It was so exciting to talk about XYZ. I know that entire week what I'm working on, what I'm working towards. The following week, so for example, like warming up my lunch, I know I want to focus on how to engage my audience. So I'm going to focus on content around the outlines I have with problem awareness, relatability, pain points, before and afters, right? But then I know in my stories, I want to touch on that, but I also want to touch on like either testimonials, social proof pieces, talking about like my own transformation in that moment, like maybe those pain points in like tiny snippets of my day, right? So as you guys all know, I used to struggle with content. So why it's one of the reasons I love doing challenges. It gives you a way to create content that's a little bit easier. And so I would talk about, I used to have so much trouble making content. That's why I created this challenge, right? Or maybe getting in my stories and talking about, oh my goodness, a long time ago when I had trouble making content, I used to go and spend 2 hours every day scrolling for trending audios, and it was taking me way too much time. That's why I've made this an easier way. And we just want to make sure that we know what's happening each week. We know what we're working on. And we keep it super flexible in general because I don't have my copy written out, things like that. I can then go ahead and I see a trending sound I want to use. And I know, all right, I'm sharing a post about problem awareness. What does this freebie help with, right? I can go ahead and use a trending sound. I probably already have my hook in here and I can go ahead and make that. So for example, let me pull up one of mine, right? So this was from last month. It's wild to me that you would rather let content stop you from talking about your business than get help and then move on to something else, right? So that was my hook. That turned into a carousel for me. The copy's somewhere else, but I knew exactly what I was going to talk about, right? And what it was leading into, which was my VIP day at that point. So I can talk my stories about that. I could create a piece of content being like, I used to struggle posting and I would let content get in the way of actually talking about my offer. Instead, I just kind of like shared pictures of my dog. I don't have a dog. I don't know why I said that. But you know what I mean? Just like, I didn't have a purpose. If I didn't have a purpose, then I wouldn't know what to talk about in my stories. So that is part 4 and 5 of planning out a month of content. And like I said, you go from that empty brain dump moment, you're in busy, crazy notepad, into something that looks kind of like this. Like I said, December is a bad example because December was weird, but where I know every single day a way I'm showing up and what I'm working towards every single week. So super excited and hope you guys all liked part 4 and 5. Like I said, I couldn't put this all in just one little like 2 minute, well, minute and a half each reel. Wasn't going to make sense. So if you have any questions or you're catching on a replay, let me know. And thank you guys for joining today.